everyone, and welcome back to a new video. In today's video, I wanted to share some recommendations for books that strongly feature really great sibling dynamics, family dynamics, but mostly sibling dynamics and sibling relationships, and books where that really takes center stage and it's a big part of the story. Many books have siblings in them. They have families in them that are beautifully drawn out, and interactions amongst the family members, they can be very well written, but I wanted to really highlight books that make siblinghood something very special and feature sibling relationships that really shine through, and they just make me love the book all the more and endear me to the story all the more. Some of the books on this list I've read a while ago and may not remember specific character names and all of that, but they did stand out to me because of the sibling dynamics, and I really felt like I need to highlight these books. And if you are also a reader that loves to read about siblings and loves to see really sweet and cozy sibling moments, then hopefully you'll find a recommendation that sounds interesting to you. And I would also love to hear your recommendations. If there are books I have not mentioned that feature great sibling dynamics, please let me know in the comments. I would love to read more books that feature beautiful sibling relationships. It's something that I love. Maybe because I'm the oldest of 5 kids and I grew up in a big family and I have 3 sisters and a brother, and I just love how these books on this list made me feel while reading them. I of course love my family, and I love feeling almost like a sense of nostalgia or being a sister and being the oldest of 5. Like I understand what it's like to be in the position that some of these characters find themselves in, and I just love it. I love sibling dynamics so much and really wanted to share my personal favorites list, and hopefully it'll encourage some of you to try some of these books out. And I have the books categorized by, I guess, genre in a way. We'll start off with some middle grade, miscellaneous, fantasy, that sort of thing. And then I have some classics and historical fiction. So timestamps are below for all the books as well if you wanted to jump around. But we'll start off with the absolute classic fantasy story that features sibling relationships in such a beautiful way. And of course, that is the Chronicles of Narnia by C.S. Lewis. I will say the stories within the Chronicles of Narnia, they're not my absolute favorite, but I do really enjoy following the sibling group. We have Peter, Susan, Edmund, and Lucy, and their dynamic is just so fun to follow. And with all the adventures they get up to, their sibling loyalty is definitely tested many times. And it's just such a beautiful story of family, besides obviously all the Christian allegorical elements of Narnia. But I could not start off this video without mentioning the absolute classic sibling group in literature. They are wonderful, and so many readers have absolutely fallen in love with literature through the Chronicles of Narnia, through these siblings and their adventures. And I had to recommend the Chronicles of Narnia, of course, because of these wonderful characters. Narnia could definitely also go into the middle grade category, but just before I go over the other middle grade books, I do have another fantasy novel that I wanted to recommend. It is YA fantasy, and that is Caraval by Stephanie Garber. I'm not the biggest YA fantasy reader, but this is a series that I've now read twice, and I think I will always feel, I don't know if nostalgia is the right word, because I only read this for the first time as an adult, and nostalgia just doesn't seem like the right word, but it's a special series for me because it introduced me to fantasy. I did not grow up reading fantasy. I only read Christian historical fiction throughout my teen years, and I really fell in love with this, especially the sister relationship between Scarlett and Donatella. And they are whisked away to this world of Caraval, where it's like a carnival circus type of thing where there are so many weird things happening. One of the sisters is kidnapped and the other is on a mission to save her sister. So it is truly a story of courage and beautiful sister relationship, and I loved it. Even though it's not a favorite book, I loved the way Scarlett and Tella loved each other and risked everything for each other. It is a beautiful story of what a sister will do for a sister, and that's definitely one of the big reasons why I loved this entire trilogy. Scarlett and Tella, fantastic characters. I also wanted to recommend an adult fantasy, and it is in my opinion, adult fantasy. I don't know what it's pitched as, but in my eyes, it's adult. And that is the Soulmark duology by J.J. Fisher. So in the first book, and I did talk about this in my spring and summer book recommendations video, so I won't talk in depth about what the books are about, but they are fantasy. They are kind of Christian allegorical fantasy, and the first book doesn't have as much to do with siblings, although our main character ends up trying to find her sister who was shipped to this prison island, and she is trying to find her. And in book 2 is really where the sibling dynamics really, are kicked up a notch. We have the sister relationship, but we also have a very difficult relationship between brothers, and they're trying to overcome, their bitterness with each other, and sibling relationships is really strongly featured in book 2. But I had to recommend this duology as well. It is just so beautiful, so underrated. I love this duology so much. This next novel is also fantasy. It is categorized as middle grade, although I feel with what happens in the story, it would probably be more for older middle grade, very young YA. But that is The Two Princesses of Bamarre by Gail Carson Levine. And I just reread this for the second time in April and talked about it in my April wrap up, so I won't talk about the plot. But it's another story where sisterhood, courage, and sacrificial love are at the center of the story, where one sister who is meek and terrified basically of her own shadow is the one that has to go and defeat this monster in a way to save her sister from death. And it is a beautiful story as well, and I love the sisters so much. We have Meryl and Addie, and their sisterhood is beautiful. Another book that I had to recommend for such a beautiful portrayal of what it means to be a sister. I loved this one. Then we have A Place to Hang the Moon by Kate Albus. This is one of my favorite middle grade novels of all time, one of my favorite books of all time, and this cover is also just beautiful. This story is just rich in everything. It is just beautiful writing, beautiful character dynamics, beautiful found family, and these siblings are just, I love them so much. We have William, Anna, and Edmund at the center of the story, and it's set during World War II, where Operation Pied Piper was underway. Thousands of children were sent off to the countryside to avoid, I guess, the bombings going on in the bigger cities in England. And it's their story of having no one, having no family, and really relying on each other and finding some very special people along the way. And it's just perfection. Another story where if you love reading about siblings, this is a must read. I don't think I need to say anything about the Little House on the Prairie series. I mean, this is quintessential family, siblings. Laura, Mary, and Carrie. Oh my goodness. Let's not forget baby Grace. But this series is just absolutely beautiful. I loved it. I did not grow up on the books, but I did grow up watching the show, and just truly these characters feel like family to me. I grew up feeling like if they were to walk right through the front door, it would feel completely normal. Like I would know who they are. And I truly just cannot get enough of Little House. I love this series so much. But of course we have our main sisters. But also in Farmer Boy, we have Almanzo Wilder, who, with his siblings, they grew up on a farm, and there's just so much to love about the way that siblings and family is portrayed in this series. I had to mention it as well. The last middle grade here is The Vanderbeekers of 141st Street by Karina Ann Glaser. And in this book, it's set around Christmas time, so Christmas is the perfect time to read it. But we have this family that live in Harlem, and their landlord one day just tells them he is not going to renew their lease. And so they are scrambling to figure out what to do. They have no idea why he won't renew their lease, and it's just a few days before Christmas. And the kids of this family, there are 5 children, I believe, they all decide to do everything in their power to make their landlord change his mind. And it is precious. Their names are Lisa, Lainey, Jessie, Oliver, and Hyacinth. And I remember just adoring them reading this book. They were so sweet, and I really need to continue this series because I loved the sibling group so much, and each individual child is so unique and different from the other, and it reminded me a lot of my own siblings and I. We are also 5 children, and I just loved this book. and I need to continue the series, and I had to recommend it as well. Moving on to historical fiction, we first have a trilogy that I wanted to recommend, and that is the Sunrise at Normandy trilogy by Sarah Sundin. Book 1 is The Sea Before Us, Book 2 is The Sky Above Us, and Book 3 is The Land Beneath Us. This trilogy is so powerful. It is set during the Second World War, obviously Normandy, and D-Day is featured in each of the stories. The brothers in the series, just amazing. The way that their stories unfold and then come to a close in the third book, just beautiful. I love the brotherhood in this trilogy so much. In the first book, in the prologue, a tragedy occurs, and it is so awful what happens, and the brothers end up all kind of running away from home in a sense and serving in the war in their own way. I think one is in the Navy, one's in the Army, and one is in the Air Force. And we do have female characters as well that are all introduced, and they're also serving in the war effort. But the three brothers, they are all so uniquely drawn out and characterized, and their pain and what they go through, it just is so realistic to me and so beautifully portrayed. And their story throughout these three books, I just loved it so much. This series is one of my absolute favorites when it comes to the way that brothers and bitterness and healing is portrayed. It is perfection in that regard, and I could not recommend it enough just for that. A series I haven't talked about in quite some time is the Shadows Over England series by Rosanna M. White, and we have the first book, which is A Name Unknown. Book 2 is A Song Unheard, and then Book 3 is An Hour Unspent. And this series is a little different in the sense that the sibling group, they are not related biologically, but they all grew up kind of as street urchins. They were taken in by someone and raised together as pickpockets in London in the 1910s or thereabouts. Even though they're not actual siblings, these characters are very much like siblings, and each book deals with a different sibling in the group. And the first book we have Rosemary, the second book is Willa, and then the third book is Barclay. And they are all wonderful, and the way that they grow and mature is just beautiful. And in the first book, we start off with Rosemary, like I was saying, and she has a job to steal something very valuable. So they are very much still, in their lifestyle of pickpocketing, but for high value goods now. And it's their story of coming out of that lifestyle, and this is Christian fiction as well, so there is kind of a coming to faith element, which I found very beautiful, and I love this series. Out of everything I've read by Rosanna M. White so far, this was the first series I read by her, and it still remains my favorite. Nothing has beat this original series for me, and I'm really scared to reread it because I'm scared it won't live up to that initial feeling I had reading these books, but I still remember the characters. I still remember just loving my time, and I loved this little group of now adult street urchins, pickpockets, etc. They are so rough around the edges, but really grow into themselves, and it is beautiful. And it's also set right when World War I is about to begin as well. When they are adults, World War I is just around the corner. There's some political intrigue, and it's just so great. Highly recommend. I also wanted to recommend Frederica by Georgette Hare. This is a Regency romance. This book was written sometime in the mid-20th century, so it is more of a modern classic, but it is a story of Frederica who ends up taking her siblings. I don't remember all their names, but she has several younger siblings that she's responsible for, and she brings them all to London with her with the goal of securing a marriage for one of her sisters. While in London, Frederica meets a very distant cousin of theirs and basically asks for his help in finding a suitable bachelor for her sister. And Frederica herself is single. She's not really thinking about her own relationship and her own future, but she really is just trying to make sure that her siblings are well provided for. And I just related to her so much in that sense. And I loved all the little antics that her siblings got up to. There were so many laugh out loud, funny moments in this book. The scrapes and the just hilarious moments with her siblings really made this reading experience such a great one for me, and reminded me a lot of myself, my siblings, my cousins, just all the things we got up to as kids, and I loved it so much. And of course, along the way, Frederica gets her own little romance, which is always nice, but I truly, truly loved this book and would highly recommend if you need a really good, funny kind of book that has some really funny character moments as well and great sibling dynamics. We're now going to move over to classics, and the very first book that came to mind when I thought of siblings within classics, can any of you guess what the book is going to be? It is, of course, Little Women by Louisa May Alcott. Meg, Jo, Beth, and Amy, absolute perfection. The portrayal of sisterhood is everything in this book. It is everything to me. I love it so much. Growing up on the 90s movie, I just wanted my sisters and I to be those girls so much. And then reading the book for the first time, oh my goodness. This is what sisterhood is for me. I just adore this book. I could not recommend books with fantastic sibling relationships without recommending Little Women. I don't care how annoying it gets because I know I talk about this book a lot, but it deserves it. It is perfection. Another book where we have a really interesting cast of sisters, although we may not get as much depth in terms of their personal interactions with each other, but I do still think that the sister relationships and the sisters in this book, they're worth mentioning for sure, in my opinion, and that is Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. Of course, the Bennet sisters. They are all so unique and they all bring something different to the table. And I just love how they're portrayed in this book. The next time I reread Pride and Prejudice, I'm definitely going to try to focus more on seeing what Jane Austen did and said about the sisters in this book, their individual little quirks and everything, but also their interactions with each other. I'm going to try to pay a lot more attention to that. But they're just such a wonderful group of characters, even though some of them are absolutely infuriating. Cough, cough, Lydia and Kitty, but had to mention this book as well. And then I recently reread Sense and Sensibility, and this is the book by Austen where, for me, sisterhood is just absolutely perfectly portrayed. I love Eleanor and Marianne so much, and the first time I read this book, I gave it 4 stars. I enjoyed it, but I just didn't get as much out of it as I did the second time. And with this reread that I did back in January or February, I can't remember, I just could not get enough of the sibling relationships. And it wasn't just Eleanor and Marianne. We had really interesting sibling dynamics between multiple characters, between Edmund Ferrars and his sister and his brother, who isn't on page very much, but also between the daughters of Mrs. Jennings, and I'm completely blanking on their names, but just really poignant portrayals of what it means to have siblings. So had to mention both of these books by Jane Austen. They're just fantastic. Had to mention them. I don't know where I put my copy of this next book. I just finished reading it and oh my goodness, it was fantastic. But I did need to mention Wives and Daughters by Elizabeth Gaskell. I'm not going to say anything about the story just because I just finished it. I am going to talk about it in a separate video, but this book, wow, the relationship between Osborne and Roger, the brothers, and then the relationship between the stepsisters, Molly and Cynthia. I love how Gaskell portrayed those and explored what it means to have a stepsister, explored what it means to have a brother, especially a brotherhood where one brother is seen as kind of the golden child, but then he doesn't really live up to his parents' expectations. And then the other brother is kind of, you know, he's second best, but I'm not going to go on. But this book is fantastic. The sibling relationships are fantastic. I adored Wives and Daughters and had to mention it. I'm also not going to talk too much about the next book, Deerbrook by Harriet Martineau, as I did also talk about it in my spring book recommendations video. But this book also beautifully features sisters, and it reminded me a little bit of Eleanor and Marianne. And in this book, the two sisters, they are orphaned. They end up moving to live with some distant family in the English countryside in this village. And it is just their day-to-day, meeting various people within this village, some turmoil that's happening kind of more in the political sphere, but then also some relationship dynamics, some romances. But at the heart of the story is this beautiful sisterhood, and I loved it so much. I had to recommend Deerbrook. Next up, I also wanted to mention The Woman in White by Wilkie Collins, and this story features such a beautiful sister relationship between Marian and Laura. And this book is very much a gothic, kind of mysterious Victorian era story. One of my favorites. I've read it twice now and just adore it so much. I adore the characters so much. But Marian in particular, she just has this drive to do everything in her power to protect her younger sister, and she is just so full of love and courage and empathy, and oh my goodness, do I love that character. She is fantastic. It's such a wonderful sensation novel. There's this mysterious woman in white, talk of a woman escaped from an asylum, and our main character, Walter Hartright, he ends up going to live with Marion and her sister as kind of their art instructor, and he gets involved in the story, and it's just wild, and it's so wonderful. I loved it so much, and I loved the sister relationship so much. I wanted to finish off the video by a specific author who writes the most beautiful sibling relationships, family relationships, just family in general. And she is just wonderful and has written some of my favorite books of all time. And I'm talking about Charlotte Mary Yonge. And I'll first mention Dynevor Terrace. I know it's kind of hard to see the title in this edition, but I have this beautiful edition from 1908, and this book, oh my goodness, there's just so much that happens in this story. But one of the sibling dynamics that I love so much is between Jem and Clara, and oh my goodness, this book is fantastic. Charlotte Mary Yonge writes just intense family dramas with so much going on around the family, and oh my gosh, the family dynamics in her books, just fantastic. I had to mention Dynevor Terrace. Another book by her is The Young Stepmother, and this also features a sibling group who have a new stepmother. Their father remarried, and so they're dealing with kind of that feeling of, you know, this is a stranger in the house, but the stepmother, Albinia, she's doing all that she can to make the children feel loved. And it's also a really interesting portrayal of siblings that are all very different from each other, very unique, and how they're all individually dealing with, you know, having this new mother figure in their lives. And it's just so wonderful. But my favorite Charlotte Mary Yonge book so far, I think, remains the first book I read by her, and that is The Heir of Redclyffe. Oh my gosh, this book and the Edmonston family, the Edmonston siblings, I adore how the author portrayed them in this book. It's just perfection. The older siblings, Laura, Charlie, and Amy, are kind of at the center of the story, and they also have a younger sister named Charlotte, but the three older siblings are really the heart of the story. Alongside our main character, Guy, who is a distant cousin, and then Philip Morville, who is also a cousin. But these three siblings, the Edmonston family, oh my gosh, they are wonderful. This is one of the first Victorian classics I read where I felt like the way that family was portrayed and siblings and sibling interactions, brothers and sisters, it felt the most realistic that I had come across in probably ever in a Victorian novel. I just felt like this book could have been about any family from our day and age. And I guess I just had a preconceived notion that all Victorians were, you know, very stiff and formal. And even within families, there wasn't really room to just be yourself and, you know, go crying to your mother about the rough day that you had, or just the little things that feel very much, oh, you know, a higher class Victorian wouldn't do that kind of thing. Very silly of me, but I don't know, I had these ideas in my head of what a Victorian family was like, and this book, it just proved to me that they were just like anyone else. But truly, the Edmonston siblings really made this story for me. I adored them so much. It is just such a wonderful book. So those were all the books that I wanted to recommend that have really, really wonderful sibling dynamics. In my opinion, they are books that I think are so worth your while if you love reading books about siblings and books where siblings are a really important aspect of the story. I just think they're wonderful, wonderful stories. And like I said at the beginning, please do leave your recommendations in the comments if there are any books I did not mention that you think are also worth your while for just the sheer joy of reading about siblings, sisters, brothers, etc. Please leave the recommendations in the comments below. But friends, that is it for this video, and I will see you all in my next one. Bye.